They're totally insane and they're back in this 2020 reboot of a 90s. Sorry. I had some Watch Mojo stuck in my throat. Animaniacs was an animated variety show that I frequently see called the 90s kids version of Looney Tunes. And even though I'm not a 90s kid myself, Animaniacs was also one of my childhood shows, despite it not actually airing when I was a kid. Born in the wrong generation yet again. So where did I hear about them first? I don't want to talk about it. The thing is, while YouTube was new, Content ID just did not exist. So for months on end, a channel with full Animaniacs skits would be up, allowing not 90s kids to watch the skits. The fools! They have made us too powerful. This definitely wasn't a replacement for watching the episodes in full though, as it was truly a unique cartoon, not following typical animated show formats, with some episodes having as many as 5 different segments within them, with characters as iconic as the Warners, Pinky and the Brain, Slappy Squirrel, Buttons and Mindy. The only thing that really plagued the show, in my opinion, was inconsistency. Some of these segments just weren't as good as others, some episodes weren't as funny as others, and the animation especially was all over the place. It was occasionally very bouncy, other times super snappy, and sometimes the characters just feel like they're melting. Also, Rita and Run suck ass. Can I put that on record of me saying that? Okay, cool. I tried binging the show to refamiliarize myself with it for the reboot, and while I didn't get far enough to confirm if this was the case, I also remembered the show had a steep decline in quality right after the first season. Which isn't a huge deal because the first season was 65 episodes, which according to my calculations, I think I'd have to plug in the numbers, but I think that was a lot. When I heard there was a reboot coming out, I was a happy little boy. Then as more details came out, I became concerned. The cast shrunk from approximately 1 billion characters to actually just 5. The animation style looked fine, but it didn't reach the heights of the original. And you got a Family Guy working on it. Whoo boy. You know what they say about Family Guy. Whew. I don't even need to say it. You already know what they say. The previews didn't convince me either. Something just felt off. And when the hallowed day arrived, it made sense why. You shouldn't go into Animaniacs 2020 expecting Animaniacs 90s kids. These are two entirely different shows. One is full of life and wonder, purely untainted by popular Okay, if you ever thought Animaniacs wasn't ever political, you can leave, thank you. Let me say, the first segment in the first episode isn't great in my opinion. Or good. Then you see the title card for the Pinky and the Brain skit and you're like, Jesus Christ, it's doing this. However, this is where the show picks up. The Pinky and the Brain segments are the best part. I thought this would be some dumb crap about how Brain leverages the power of the internet to take over the world with funny dog memes, but as it plays out, Brain invents the internet. He is the Bill Gates. That's something this show does a lot. It's a little extra compared to most old Animaniacs episodes, which, speaking of the old, just 2 complaints. The old art style, at least when they weren't melting, was just better. It just was. The new art style just feels generic to me, like it's an evolution of Big Mouth, which, believe it or not, you do not want. And the show also acknowledges it's a reboot. A lot. Haha, we're a reboot. Yeah, we're a reboot, Dad. What are you gonna do about it? You can't f with us because we're a reboot. Which is unbelievably annoying because they don't do anything with it. They just move on. In the original, the villains, are, to use Persona 5 terminology that was invented by Persona 5, the targets, were often the straight men in the Warner's interactions. This show, the turntables and the Warners are often the straight men or women. Of course, they still deal with them in wacky ways like just becoming an anime just because I don't know, I watched 4Kids once. That being said, the length the show goes to make fun of the target is often the appeal. The anime sequence just comes out of nowhere, and I like it despite being a really cool guy who hates anime and anime is dumb. Then the anime sequence ends and it's revealed that the entire bunny episode was an allegory for gun control, which I didn't catch on until they just pointed it out. Oops, turns out I'm dumb as hell. While I said Animaniacs wasn't afraid to get political before, it definitely is more prominent here, and mostly not in a style of humor that people would describe as Orange Man bad.
Who's this loser?
Yeah, mostly. There's a Pinky and the Brain segment about how stupid the Red Scare was, which honestly might be my favorite segment in the entire reboot. I was gonna describe it to you here, but honestly, it's so funny, you should just watch it. Speaking of Pinky and the Brain, unlike the Warners where they rewrote their characters to be more normal, the mice are more true to the original. It's easy when looking at these characters to say, oh, Pinky is stupid, so the plans failing are always his fault. Sometimes it's the brain's fault, or the plan's fault. Now on to the Warner segments. There's some variance here. Not as much when you compare like a Rita and Run skit to a Slappy Squirrel skit, but there is still some. The villains or targets are never really as interesting or hateable as the original, with one unique exception. The Warners in the original I saw as almost being a force of nature, while here they have that sometimes, but are often just reacting to how wacky other things are. This isn't necessarily a clear downgrade, but it loses some of the originality of the 90s kids version. Also, despite being a little more adult-oriented, the show defaults to gross-out humor way more often. Good for kids, big L for adults with smart brains like myself. Also, sometimes they just say memes. Unrelated, but I'm happy the other person aware of Lunatics Unleashed got a job in the industry. Good job, Paul. The art style I've already acknowledged as being, in my opinion, bad, but with the animation being as consistent as it is, that's an okay trade-off. Obviously, I would have preferred everything to be animated as well as good episodes with the old art style that looked like a classic Warner Brothers cartoon, but whatever. So I've kind of been all over the place with this, so what do I think of Animaniacs 2020? Is it a worthy continuation? No. Is it good? Yeah, I'd say so. I cannot emphasize this enough. This and this are two entirely different shows. While the reboot arguably destroyed what made the original unique and special, it gained one very important thing: consistency. Apart from the first episode, there was at least one joke in every segment where I at least thought to myself, that's pretty funny. There are still duds, but they're fewer and far between, and there's always something you can take away from them. It's never as fast and hardly ever as witty, but it's as good as you could hope for in this hellscape that is 2020. While I'd like it to be better, I'd rather have it exist than not.